Hi, I'm Craig, and this is Crash Course Government. It's been a dream of mine to be on Crash Course since I was a little kid. Speaking of acting like a little kid, today we're going to talk about the U.S. Congress, which, according to the Constitution, is the most important branch of government. That was probably written by Congress. It wasn't. They didn't exist yet. So when I say that Congress is supposed to be the most important branch of government, I'm talking about the national government, not the state government. There's a difference, okay? I know this because the Constitution, which consists of 7 articles and 28 amendments, mentions Congress first. In fact, right after the preamble, the very first section of the very first article, which is helpfully labeled Article 1, Section 1, says this: "All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives." So right away, the Constitution sets up a 2-house legislature with a Senate and a House of Representatives. The Latin word for this is bicameral, and I promise I'll quit with the Latin now. I didn't really say much Latin, but just once, but I won't say anymore. That's pretty catchy. So let's start with the House of Representatives because it's a little easier. In order to serve in the House, you have to be 25 years old, a citizen for 7 years, and a resident of the state that you hope to represent. I'd like to think that I represent a state of enjoyment. Vote for me. 2015. Representation is determined by population. No state has fewer than 1. Vermont, North and South Dakota, Wyoming, and Alaska each have 1. And the most populous state, California, has 52. Right now, there are 435 members of the House of Representatives. The Senate has 2 senators from each state for a total of 100. To be a senator, you must be at least 30 years old, a citizen for 9 years, and a resident of the state you hope to represent. Originally, senators were chosen by the state legislatures, which meant that they tended to be politically important members of a state's elite class. But this changed with the 17th Amendment, and now senators are elected by the people, just like representatives. I'm going to explain how the 2 houses of the legislature actually legislate in a later episode. I'll have a bigger beard, probably. But now I'm going to point out a few of the ways that they are different. Ultimately, the houses do the same thing, make laws, but the Constitution grants certain specific powers to each house. Let's look at those powers in the thought bubble. The House of Representatives is given the power to impeach the president and other federal officials. This can be confusing because people tend to think that impeaching means kicking the official out of office, but it doesn't. The House impeaches an official by deciding that that person has done something bad enough to bring him to trial. An impeachment is like a criminal indictment. Once the official is impeached, a trial happens in the Senate. If it's the president who's been impeached, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court presides. Otherwise, it's the vice president. You don't let the VP preside over a presidential impeachment trial because he has a vested interest in seeing the president removed. Then the VP would become president. Duh. The second power that the House has is that they decide presidential elections if no candidate wins a majority of the Electoral College. I'll explain this later, but for now remember that this barely ever has happened ever. The third power that belongs specifically to the House is found in Article 1, Section 7. "All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives." This is pretty important because it means that any bill that raises taxes starts in the House. And if you know anything about America, you know that we care about taxes. A lot. So this power is huge, and it's sometimes called the power of the purse. The Senate has some important powers too. The first one I've already mentioned is that they hold impeachment trials. That doesn't happen very often at all. Another power the Senate has is to ratify treaties. This requires a 2/3 vote of the Senate. Most treaties you don't hear much about, except when the Senate refuses to ratify them, as it did, or didn't do, with the Treaty of Versailles. I totally would have ratified that treaty, just saying. The last significant power that belongs only to the Senate is the confirmation power. The Senate votes to confirm the appointment of executive officers that require Senate confirmation. Some of these, like the cabinet secretaries, are obvious, but there are over 1,000 offices requiring Senate confirmation, including federal judges, and this is probably too many. Thanks, Thought Bubble. I love saying that. Yes! So those are the major differences between the 2 houses of the legislature. But why do we have 2? And why did the framers of the Constitution make them different anyway? There are 2 categories of reason here, historical and practical. The historical reason for the 2 houses is that when the Constitution was being written, the framers couldn't agree on what type of legislature to have because they came from states with different interests. Delegates from states with large populations wanted legislators to be chosen based on the state's population so that their states would have, wait for it, more legislators and more power. This is called proportional representation. States with small populations understandably didn't want proportional representation. They favored equal representation in the legislature, which would give them equal power. Large states supported what was called the Virginia Plan, and small states wanted the New Jersey Plan, and they argued over it until a compromise was reached. Since it was brokered by Connecticut's Roger Sherman, it was called the Connecticut Compromise, or more usually, the Great Compromise, because historians are really bad at naming things. Hey, this war is 9 years long. Let's call it the 7 Years' War. That's actually genius. If you guessed that the compromise was an upper house with equal representation and a lower house with proportional representation, congratulations, you understand the Great Compromise. You don't win anything if you guessed it right. Actually, if you guessed it right, click here and watch me punch an eagle. So that's the historical reason for the two houses, but what about the practical reasons? One of the main reasons to divide the legislature and give the two houses different powers is to make it so that the legislature doesn't have too much power. How do we know that the framers wanted this? Because one of them, James Madison, told us in one of the Federalist Papers. In Federalist 51, Madison wrote, "In Republican government, the legislative authority necessarily predominates. The remedy for this inconveniency is to divide the legislature into different branches and to render them, by different modes of election and different principles of action, as little connected with each other as the nature of their common functions and their common dependence on the society will admit." James Madison might not have sounded like Foghorn Leghorn, but that's one of the theories. My theory. I say. Anyway, the idea that one house of the legislature can limit the power of the other house is called an intra-branch check. We'll look at this in more detail when we talk about checks and balances. In general, the framers of the Constitution were kind of obsessed with the idea that the government might have too much power. So we'll be seeing a lot of examples of how they tried to deal with this. So let's finish up by looking at the reasons why the specific powers were given to each house. To do this, let me introduce my assistants, and by assistants, I really mean clones. Let's go to the clone zone! So I made these clones to help us understand these multi-sided issues. This is Senate clone, and this is House clone, and they're quite good looking, I might add.
So you may have noticed, according to the Constitution, senators are expected to be older than representatives. And although 30 isn't all that old today, it was in 1787 when the Constitution was written. This was because older people are wiser, or at least more experienced, and the framers wanted the Senate, which is sometimes called the upper house, to be more serious, august, dignified, and above all, deliberative than the House. It was supposed to be more immune from the desires of the public, which the framers were kind of afraid of because of their unfortunate propensity to riot. One of the ways that the framers hoped to ensure this was by giving senators a 6-year term, which really would mean that they could ignore the rantings and ravings of their constituents for at least, 5 years at a time. Because the Senate is supposed to be the more deliberative body and the one that is more insulated from public opinion, they're the ones given the power to confirm public ministers and to ratify treaties. I guess they thought that, being older and wiser, senators would be better judges of character and better able to govern based on the sense of what is in the public interest. Sometimes the idea that a representative should govern based on what he thinks is best for the people rather than what they say they want is referred to as representative acting as a trustee.
Which is another way of saying that the Senate is full of elitist snobs that don't care what their constituents want at all. In the House, representatives are supposed to take into consideration the desires of the people in their districts who voted for them, acting in the role of delegates. So the main way that the framers tried to ensure that representatives could be more responsive to their voters, other than having them directly elected by the voters instead of state legislatures, was to give them 2-year terms. This meant that they had to be responsive to the changing opinion of voters in their districts. Otherwise, they could easily be voted out of office. You don't want that. No way. Oh boy. Why they would be given the power of impeachment is sort of beyond me, but it totally makes sense to give the power of the purse to the branch of government that's closest to the people. After all, one thing that the government does that is directly related to almost everybody is taxes. So you want the most democratic body making decisions that have the most direct effect on people. Thanks, clones. So there you have it. That's the basics of our bicameral Congress, including the differences between the two houses and why they are that way. I used Latin again. I'm sorry. Mea culpa. We'll be going into much greater detail about how the two houses work together, or don't, in future episodes. But that's enough for now. Thanks for watching Crash Course. I'll see you next week. Crash Course Government and Politics is produced in association with PBS Digital Studios. Support for Crash Course U.S. Government comes from Vocal. Vocal supports nonprofits that use technology and media to advance social equity. Learn more about their mission and initiatives at vocal.org. Crash Course is made with the help of these nice people. Thanks, nice people, and thanks for watching. You're nice people, I assume.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Whitfield. I am the Common Sense Democrat running for United States Senate here in the state of Arkansas to unseat and replace Senator John Boozman. And every weekend on Saturdays about 6 p.m. Central, I do a weekly live stream update Q&A where I will answer your questions if you have any, and I will also go ahead and give you updates for what has been going on with us throughout the last week and what we have upcoming. So it is Easter weekend. I'm going to make sure to keep this nice and short for y'all. Arkansas. We had a fairly slow week anyways. So let's just start with some of the more important things. I did just finish my legislative recap, so I already talked about all those important bills going through our state, so I will not do that again here. If you would like to hear about those 11 bills that I talked about, you can go back and watch that video. COVID-19. COVID-19 is still there. People may act like it's not, especially here in the South, but it is still there. We have actually seen before today a 7-day concurrent increase in cases where we went all the way down. I think it was to like 114 or something. And then we went all the way back up to over 280 cases per day. So it is still here. We have to be taking it seriously. We have to make sure we're wearing masks, socially distancing, and washing our hands. Even when you have your vaccination, that doesn't mean you're immune to the virus. That means that you can still catch the virus, and then you can still spread the virus. But you will be a lot less likely to suffer a fatality from the symptoms of the virus. So make sure you understand how the vaccines work, what they're doing for you. They are keeping yourself safe. They're keeping your family safe as they get them, but the virus is still there. I believe Asa Hutchinson just the other day raised, or he actually made it so that every Arkansan over the age of 16 is now eligible to get a vaccine, which is amazing because we have way more vaccines on hand than what people seem to want for some reason here in Arkansas. So let's go ahead and make sure that if you are eligible for the vaccine, so you're over 16 years old, go out and get it if you can. If you're immunocompromised, it's a really good thing for you to get it that way. It'll give you a little bit of symptoms now, but you will be safer later on if you actually catch the virus without having the vaccination. I got my first vaccine back on, oh my goodness, I think it was March 23rd. So I am scheduled to have my next vaccination on April 15th. And that means by May the 1st, I will be safe to go out and start campaigning. So that's what we're really going to start doing here within the next month or so. Now, wow, it's coming up so fast. We're going to start getting a lot of meet and greet scheduled, events scheduled. We are going to be making sure that we are traveling the whole state, talking to as many people as possible, answering questions, going to rural communities, going to larger cities, and making sure that we have fun events for everybody to participate in, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or a Libertarian or a Green Party or an Independent, whatever political party you affiliate with, we're going to try to make fun events for you. And a good example of this would be I'm going to have some fishing fundraisers, and I'm going to try to plan a tour around the entire state where we go to different areas and bring people together to fish. We'll have fish fries, barbecues. We'll talk about voter registration. We'll do a bunch of different things like that to help get the community involved, bring awareness to our campaign, and make sure that everybody knows who I am and what I represent, and who Senator John Boozman is, and what Senator John Boozman represents. Because when you look at different research papers done by who is the most favorable senators and who is the least favorable senators, John Boozman had the largest don't know margin because people don't know who he is. So we will make sure that we were going out and informing people about us, informing people about him, and helping to get people registered to vote. All right, so that's what we are going to be working on for the next couple weeks until May 1st comes along, and then I can finally hit the road and get going. And, the thing that kind of ties in with that is fundraising. Fundraising is extremely important because it does cost money for us to do these events. It costs money for us to travel. So if you can, make sure you share our Act Blue link or share my donor box link. We need to start getting some more donations coming in. Y'all have been doing amazing. We've actually raised over $1,000 this last week, which is the most that we had raised since we had started our campaign. So thank you guys so much for your support. We've been doing awesome. Let's keep it up. Let's build some momentum. Let's make sure that by November 2022, that every single person in Arkansas knows who Dan Whitfield is, knows what I stand for, and is willing to vote for me, not because of a special interest who told them to, or because they've seen giant billboards all over the state with my face and my name on it, but because they like what I stand for and they know I listen to their problems. So I have been doing the crash course episodes at the beginning of each of my live streams. This is the second week in a row we've done it. And today we talked about Congress. And one of the important lines to get out of that is senators believe that they are trustee representatives, while House members are delegate representatives, which means House members listen to their constituents and do what their constituents want because they have to win an election every 2 years. Whereas senators for the most part, do what they think is best. Not necessarily what is best, what we think is best, what we think is right for our families, but what they think is best. Now, back in the 1800s, I'm sure that was a good thing because we didn't have a lot of educated people. We didn't have a lot of college educated people. A lot of people didn't have updated information on what was going on around the country and the world. They didn't really know what was best for them. But you know what? It's 2021. A lot of us are educated. A lot of us have higher education, and we know exactly what's going on around the country and the world every single day because we have this amazing thing called a phone that has Facebook, the news applications, and things like that. So we know what's going on. And I personally believe that we know what's best for our families. That's why I will never be a trustee representative. Even as your senator, I will always be a delegate representative, which is why I will hold 12 town halls per week, which is why I will also submit 12 bills per year created by my constituents, Arkansans. And that right there is going to give Arkansans a voice in the legislative process. But enough about my whole political spiel. Like I said, it's going to be a fairly short live stream. If anyone has any questions, then I will go ahead and answer them. All right. So Morris asked a question in YouTube. He said, do you have a position on value added tax, VAT taxes, and universal basic income? So I actually do. So number one, the good thing about VAT taxes is it is a very progressive tax that is going to make sure that we have a lot of the population paying the same amount of taxes, and we don't have to worry about, say, billionaires getting away from taxation altogether, or 100 millionaires and things like that, like the super, super, ultra wealthy rich guys. The ones who avoid taxes altogether, it will help put an end to that. So a lot of countries do have value-added taxes, and the good thing about that is we can actually look at several different countries' models, and we can build our own model from those, looking at historical data to make sure that it is going to be a type of tax that is progressive, that works for us and helps our society grow. So we do have a lot to look into with value added taxes. The data's there, the historical data's there. We can make some choices based on that I think will definitely benefit our society. And as far as universal basic income goes, I do support UBI. I work in automation. I automated my own job basically. And so I see the dangers that automation will bring to our society. And it's already estimated that by 2035, just 14 short years away, we are looking at a 40% unemployment rate due to automation of jobs. So before it'd be like, well, 40% unemployment, it was the last time it happened was like the Great Depression. How do I know what that's going to be like? Well, we just saw it with COVID-19. This time last year, we saw about a 40% unemployment. Now, we know how it will affect our society when there are that many people unable to find work. Now we know what to prepare for. Now we know what to do to make sure that kind of thing never happens again. So before, my policy stance was, yes, I support UBI, but I don't know if it's time. I don't know if the American people are ready for it yet. Well, it's time. We're ready for it. We've seen how our society has suffered this last year because we don't have a UBI, where a good example would be these stimulus checks. Other countries have really helped their citizens out throughout this pandemic. And because of that, they have not only helped the mental well-being of their citizens and kept their society, their hopes high, they have even prevented people from losing their cars, their homes, their houses, everything. Basically, you can lose everything when your income stops because bills won't stop. Another problem we're going to have coming up here soon is these rent moratoriums. Okay, so I didn't have to pay rent for not me personally, but just saying, okay, so someone didn't have to pay rent for the last 6 months, but what happens when they finally have to pay all that back? It's not like a bunch of money is going to magically appear in their bank account and they can be like, okay, here's my back rent, I'm good. That's not how it works. So other countries, like say Canada, for example, they have been giving their citizens, I think it was like, oh, hold on, so that I don't throw out inaccurate numbers. All right, so the Canada stimulus. All right. So Canada was giving out $2,000 a month a person in stimulus payments throughout the pandemic. And because of that, they kept their COVID rates low. People didn't have to worry about losing everything because of like if they got COVID. Now, another example would be New Zealand. New Zealand gave their residents $595 per week for 2 months, had a complete lockdown, 100% lockdown. But they gave people enough money to pay their bills. Now, because of this, after 2 months, they had 0 new cases of COVID-19. They beat the virus by simply locking down and giving people enough money to survive. The United States of America, we had $1,200 stimulus last year. For some reason, our lawmakers thought that we could survive a year off $1,200. I know some people have already gotten a $600 check. Some people have already gotten a $1,400 check, but millions of Americans still have not seen those. On average, Canadians from their government received $66 a day during the pandemic, while the United States citizens, one of the wealthiest nations in the history of the world, received about $6.60 per day. So we do have a long ways to go. I think UBI is necessary. And I personally think throughout the entire last year, we should have been giving citizens $2,000 a month a person until the pandemic was over. And our pandemic would have been over in a couple months. Our economy would have already been back to strength. The virus would have been defeated. We wouldn't be seeing this surge in new COVID cases. It would have made everything better. All right, so that went on a little bit longer than I planned on talking about UBI, but I do support it. So I had kind of closed down my Facebook and all these different things. Let me see if there's any questions on here. No questions. All right, let me check Twitter. I don't have a whole lot else to talk about. I do need volunteers still. I do have a Slack group for my volunteers. And if you can't get into Slack, then we'll find a different way to get you involved, such as a Facebook chat message group, or even if through texting and phone calls, whatever works for you, what you're comfortable with. If you can volunteer, please help. We've got to beat the GOP. We've got to make sure that neither Jan Morgan or John Boozman neither Jan Morgan becomes our senator because, wow, Jan Morgan, or we have to also make sure that John Boozman does not continue to vote on legislation that does not benefit Arkansans, but instead benefits his donors and special interests. All right, let me check on Twitter real quick. So if you can volunteer, reach out to me on direct message. Reach out to me. danforarkansas.com is my website. Click contact. My phone number's there. You can text me if you're comfortable doing that. You can call me if you're comfortable doing that. I answer my own phone and calls, my text messages, my social media messages, all that stuff. I do it all. Or even send me an email. But if you can volunteer, we need all the help we can get. Whether you're a graphics designer, a website developer, if you have experienced phone banking, if you don't mind going door to door, if you're already vaccinated, whatever you can contribute, we would greatly appreciate it. And when you reach out to me, I'll get you a link to our Slack. And our Slack group is fairly inactive right now. We're kind of waiting to get started after my second dose and I'm safe to go out. That's when we're really going to hit the road and get going. So, if you can volunteer, let me know. We'll get involved early and get you into the group, and we'll stand by idle mostly until May. Now, again, with that, we've got to get fundraising coming in. So please share my donation links through ActBlue or DonorBox. We've got to get money to pay for all these events that we're going to be sponsoring across the entire state. But did anyone have any other questions? I'm so sorry, by the way. I know my audio is working fine, but the video is really choppy. I will make sure that that's fixed by the next live stream. I'm not sure exactly what's up with Haps, but I will get that problem solved. As long as y'all can hear me, that's what's important. All right, cool. So I don't see any other questions. Make sure, again, you check out my legislative recap video, the live stream I just did an hour ago. I talked about 11 bills, 5 bad bills, 6 good bills for our state. I will be doing my next legislative recap live stream on this upcoming Friday. Oh my gosh, I have to flip my calendar forward now. Time is flying. It is already the 3rd. All right, moving into April. I don't have any meetings scheduled this upcoming week, but it's going to be April 9th will be my next live stream. So make sure to join us and learn about what is happening in Arkansas or your state if you're here in Arkansas. But I'm going to go ahead and let you all go. Again, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch. Send me an email, text message, whatever you're comfortable with, and I will answer your questions in a timely manner. And I agree, man, I just appreciate y'all's support so much. We are going to flip Arkansas blue in 2022. It's going to happen. We can do this. We just have to make sure we're volunteering, we're networked, we're organized, and we are moving through the state talking to as many people as possible. All right, but y'all have a happy Easter. Enjoy this time with your families, this beautiful weather that we've finally been getting. Stay safe. Make sure, again, you socially distance, wear masks, and wash your hands when in public. And, you guys have a wonderful evening. May God bless y'all. May God bless America. And may God bless Arkansas.